Honourable members, honorables députés, I'll ask the media to please clear the room. Honourable members, honorables députés, je constate.
I note that there's quorum, honourable members. Given the report passed yesterday in the House on the makeup of committees, House committees, there is now a vacancy for the chair of the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics.
Committee, pursuant to Standing Order 106.2, to proceed immediately to the election of a chair. I want to remind members of the committee that the same standing order provides that the chair of this committee be a member of the official opposition. I'm now ready to receive motions to that effect. Mr. Angus.
It is my great honor to nominate Monsieur Pierre-Luc Dussault as chair. We didn't even get into the fight yet.
Mr. Angus moves that Monsieur Dussault be elected chair of the committee. Are there any other motions? Seeing none, is it the pleasure of the committee to adopt the motion? All those in favor? Yes. None opposed? I declare the motion carried, and Monsieur Dussault duly elected chair of the committee, and I invite him to take his chair.
Bienvenue à cette réunion.
Welcome to this meeting of the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics. I'd like to thank Mr. Carroll for coming this morning. As agreed, we will give breaks to witnesses at the discretion of the chair when appropriate. I believe 10-minute breaks would be appropriate, and we will do that at appropriate times, but not more than 3 or 4 times. Before we begin, I wish to read a short excerpt from House of Commons Procedure and Practice for the benefit of our witness and that of the committee as a whole. Members will note that Mr. Carroll is accompanied by his counsel, Mr. Paul Champ. As it states on pages 1067 and 1068 of O'Brien Bosque, and I will read it in English.
Assist by counsel, but they must first seek the committee's permission. Counsel may permit is restrict to an advisory role and may neither ask questions nor reply on the witness's behalf. Counsel is not noted in the minutes of proceedings as a witness, but rather as a participant or a person attending as an individual. There are no specific rules governing the nature of questions which may be put to witnesses appearing before committees, beyond the general requirement of relevance to the issue before the committee. Witnesses must answer all questions which the committee puts to them. A witness may object to a question asked by an individual committee member. However, if the committee agrees that the question be put to the witness, he or she is obliged to reply. On the other hand, members have been urged to display the appropriate courtesy and fairness when questioning witnesses. The actions of witness who refuse to answer question may be reported to the House. Cela dit, j'invite maintenant.
With that in mind, I now invite Mr. Carroll to make his opening statement for a maximum of 10 minutes. Mr. Carroll.
Just a quick second. I'd like to congratulate you on election as chair. I think we should also recognize Ms. Jean Crowder, the former chair of the committee, for the work that she has done. And it might be appropriate from the committee if we just send a little letter thanking her for the work that she has done on the committee. So I just thought I'd like to put that in there before we start. And congratulations, Mr. Chair.
Merci.
Thank you. I'll now give the floor to Mr. Carroll for a 10-minute opening statement. Thank you very much, and congratulations to you.
Committee. On March 6, 2012, the Speaker ruled the WikiLeaks matter closed and found no further reason to investigate. Nevertheless, despite the Speaker's ruling and the procedures of the House, some members of this committee have persisted that I appear. Indeed, Mr. Chair, your predecessor rightly ruled against the Conservative motion initiating this inquest. But these members showed you and your predecessor the same degree of deference that they accorded the Speaker, usurping his and your authority with their own. In doing so, they demonstrate disregard for this committee's mandate and the many responsibilities clearly set out in Standing Order 1083H, none of which include the use of House of Commons resources. Furthermore, Procedure and Practice, page 1048, is prescriptive when it comes to the authorities of committees. And I quote, "Committees have no independent existence and are not permitted to take action unless they have been authorized or empowered to do so by the House." The Speaker ruled, the Chair ruled, Procedure and Practice is ruled. So let me remind everybody that under normal circumstances, we would not be here today. However, I agreed to voluntarily appear for two simple reasons. First is my respect for Parliament, and second is to bring this matter to a close. I will provide a brief summary about what I did and what motivated me to act. I will then be prepared to answer questions related to the supposed reason for this meeting, my use of House of Commons resources. However, I want to be very clear about a few things. I am WikiLeaks 30. I, and I alone, am the author of that WikiLeaks posting site. I was never ordered nor asked to do it. I never discussed my actions with any member of Parliament, including the interim leader of the Liberal Party. I acted on my own. All information was posted that was already on the public record, obtained from accessible sources. Now allow me to recall some of the chronology for the purposes of context. On February 13, 2012, Minister Vic Taves, in addressing his online spy bill, infamously challenged all Canadians to either stand with us or with the child pornographers. Like most Canadians, I was deeply offended by the minister's aggressive and needlessly polarizing language. The following day, February 14, 2012, Mr. Taves introduced Bill C-30, but not before changing, seemingly at the last second, the title of the bill to Protecting Children from Internet Predators Act. Now, I'm not alone in believing that Bill C-30 is a sweeping piece of legislation that will allow the Canadian government to routinely invade the privacy of Canadians by monitoring their activity on the internet. For many Canadians like me, personal privacy is a fundamental civic and human right. It goes to the very core of our personal dignity and identity. I was raised in a culture that cherishes freedoms and rights. A people who have, in living memory, learned the hard way what's at risk if we do not stand up for our rights and our freedoms. Given the haste with which bills are passed under this current government, and given their refusal to consider amendments to their bills, it seemed that this bill was all but passed. I felt compelled to urgently bring public attention to the threat Bill C-30 would pose on our rights and our privacy. I took an approach, but simply argued that the minister felt strongly that he should know everything about us. Perhaps we should know a little more about the man who wants unrestricted access to our information. To make the point further, everything I posted was from publicly available documents. If publicly available information could, in its retelling, be uncomfortable, imagine what could be done with your private information. Indeed, none of the information posted was secret or private. In fact, most of it had already been published in various media. Divorce details, for example, had been reported dozens of times. This was especially the case in 2008, when the minister was rumored to be soliciting support for a judicial appointment. The same day the bill was introduced, February 14, 2012, I assembled publicly available affidavits, a list of notable quotes, election overspending court documents, proactive disclosure data. From my home, I set up a Twitter account called WikiLeaks with the address of WikiLeaks 30, a direct reference to Bill C-30. I transcribed portions of the affidavits and other documents. From this list of brief quotes, I made 5 postings that evening. The record of these postings will show that these were done in the evening after work hours. On February 15th, 2012, I quickly and easily cut and pasted a few dozen more postings from my list. I can see that these were done at work. That evening at home, I created a spreadsheet detailing expenses as well as details from Mr. Tave's election overspending conviction. Again, this was all publicly available information. On February 16, 2012, I made approximately 24 postings on WikiLeaks. It was also on that day that I received an email that I later learned was from the Ottawa Citizen phishing for my IP address. The next day, February 17, 2012, the Ottawa Citizen published their story on the IP addresses. It was clear a witch hunt had begun. Innocent people were needlessly and unfairly accused, including the NDP and a specific employee of the House of Commons. To avoid further harm to them and others, I shut down the account, but not before I made it clear that the wrong people were being targeted. It was also that day that the Speaker's office initiated an investigation. Though no laws had been broken, nor any evidence that any policies had been breached. In fact, there are plenty of examples of House of Commons IP addresses being used to edit Wikipedia pages, both to vandalize and to whitewash them. There are also numerous examples of House of Commons resources being used to attack the actions of other members of Parliament, but the Speaker's office has never, in my knowledge, investigated those activities. The irony is not lost on me that the Speaker of the House used his powers to trace my personal IP address and my personal online activity. This is precisely what the online spying bill will do to everybody. Before I conclude, I want to thank my family, my friends, my lawyer Paul Champ, and the many Canadians who've reached out to me with their support. It's been a very difficult time for me personally for reasons known and unknown. However, I want to point out again that all the information I posted was from publicly available documents. Everything I did was perfectly legal. I take full responsibility for my actions. Ultimately, I hope my experience prompts further awareness of the threats to our personal privacy and the critical importance of defending our freedoms and rights. Bill C-30 is not gone. The reaction of Canadians has forced this government to delay their plans, but the bill is still sitting on the table and will most likely be back. And when that day comes, I urge Canadians to stand up to this government and fight for our collective right to privacy. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Merci, Monsieur Carroll. Alors, nous allons commencer.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. We will now begin a round of questions, and we'll start with Mr. Angus for 7 minutes.
Congratulate you on your appointment. I think you're going to be an excellent chair at our committee, and now that you're not on this side, I'm going to actually have to do a lot more work because you did so much work for us when you were a committee member, but I want to congratulate you on your appointment. I'd like to thank you for coming, Mr. Carroll. I'll say at the outset that there's many governments in this world that use the power of the majority to attack their political enemies. It's not normally the Westminster tradition, except under this government, and we've seen this committee misused many times. I don't believe it's appropriate that you were here. But this is the power of this government, use of majority and abuse of parliamentary procedure. So we will deal with the fact that the Speaker ruled this issue closed, that our committee chair ruled this issue closed, and yet we are going back before it. So from the New Democratic point of view, we are just interested in getting some facts on the record so we can put this unsavory issue to bed. The IP address that was tracked, was that a home address or was that a work address? Was that a BlackBerry address?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. The IP address that was tracked by the Ottawa Citizen was a House of Commons desktop computer address.
Okay, so you used your desktop computer for that. Now, were you working in the interim leader's office? Like, what was your position in the Liberal Party before your resignation?
Sure. My position with the interim leader's office was the caucus resources manager.
Okay. The WikiLeaks, I didn't ever look at them, but there was a huge online media backlash against Bill C-30, in particular the actions of Minister Taves and the rather flagrant disregard he seemed to show for average Canadians, his accusation that anybody who believed in privacy rights was somehow a child pornographer. I think that struck a lot of Canadians and gave justifiable anger to Canadians to push back, and we saw a huge online response. What was it that separated the WikiLeaks 30 from the online massive Twitter response that we saw? What was it that you were setting out to accomplish?
I think if going back and looking at that period, the WikiLeaks postings occurred prior to the full internet backlash, predated maybe by 24, 48 hours, the Tell Vic Everything hashtag, and some of the other activities that ultimately became big news. So at the time, and as I have mentioned in my opening statement, it was simply to bring public attention to the dangers of the bill.
Okay, I see. So it predated the Tell Vic's Everything, but there was a huge online backlash against this bill from the get-go, from the moment that the Conservative government changed the name of the bill at the last minute to try and divert Canadians' attention from the fact that this was about spying on average Canadians, and they attempted to turn this into, they named it the 11th hour. The bill was suddenly protecting children from child pornographers, that whole response. Now, you said that everything in the WikiLeaks was true, so you were providing the unsavory details of Minister Taves' divorce. That was part of it. You mentioned his conviction for election fraud in the province of Manitoba. Where did you get these documents?
Sure. The documents, most of those documents are available online. The affidavits in particular were in our office.
So did you point editorial commentary, or was it just the facts of him being convicted for electoral fraud and him being involved in a very ugly and messy divorce? Did you just post from the affidavits, or were you making comments? What were you doing? Was this libelous, or was this just, as they say on the old Dragnet show, just the facts, ma'am?
The postings were verbatim, except there were a few instances where I removed proper names and replaced them with wife, child, and took out those proper names.
So you actually took out the names of people personally so that they weren't going to be implicated along with Minister
Correct.
Taves and his behavior?
Yes.
Okay. You had mentioned that you were concerned that innocent people were unfairly accused. One of the things that happened when the investigation started is that you began to friend many New Democrats, and we were dragged into this issue and blamed for your behavior. Was this a purposeful campaign to try and divert attention from the Liberal Party and drag us into this?
Absolutely not. I think that the only people making accusations against the New Democratic Party were specific Conservatives. I recall during question period that Friday that Minister Baird was quite vocal in his accusations.
Well, I seem to remember some key Liberal bloggers pointing the finger at us because we were suddenly friends or we were being followed by WikiLeaks. Why did you start to follow us when the heat was on? It seems that we were being dragged into this whole unsavory situation, and Liberal bloggers were blaming us.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. There is a specific blogger who's had associations with the Liberal Party who made that assumption. The intention was not at all what that individual misconstrued as being the case. When I first set up the account, obviously I had no idea who was going to follow this, if anybody was going to follow this. I could never have anticipated the attention that it got. So when I first started the Twitter account, I started following people who had an interest in Canadian politics. It's a pretty common thing to do. You follow them, you hope that they follow you. So the people who I chose to follow were specific to people who've commented on Canadian politics. Now, I guess I would take it as a compliment that the New Democratic Party has a lot of people on Twitter who are commenting and very active on Canadian politics.
Yes, it did seem that we were being dragged into this. I just wanted you to clarify that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Time is up. I'll now give the floor to Mr. Del Mastro for 7 minutes.
Mr. Carroll, you've indicated you alone are the author of WikiLeaks. Specifically, you were tweeting extracts from the divorce records filed in the province of Manitoba. Can you clarify for the committee how you obtained these court documents?
Yes, of course. They were available in our office.
Can you tell me how it came to be that those court documents were in your office?
I don't know.
You don't know how the Liberal Party had court documents in your office, but you're the caucus resources manager.
From my understanding, those documents were there before I started with the office.
When did you start with the office?
It was August 2011.
August 2011. So according to information that's been provided to the Minister of Public Safety, only 2 people have ever signed out that specific file. And this has been provided to the Minister by the court in Manitoba. One connected to the NDP signed it out in February of this year after WikiLeaks 30 broke. But the other signed it out in April of 2011 during the federal election. I can only assume that that was provided to the Liberal Party then. You have no idea how the Liberal Party came to have this court document, which you indicate was publicly available, which it was, but you had to go to the province of Manitoba specifically to obtain it. You've never been to the province of Manitoba. or you haven't been specifically to retrieve this file?
Sadly, I've never had the pleasure of being a visitor to Manitoba. I intend to soon. I've flown over it a lot of times. Again, I don't know how those documents were originally obtained.
So is this common for the Liberal Party? They have files on ministers, they have files on MPs, they collect dirt that they can basically release when they see fit?
Well, I don't know if I can answer if it's common or not. I don't know. I know that every party has what's called opposition research, and there are files. It's not. I wouldn't characterize it in the way that you have. We're talking about quotes, biographical data. If there is something extra, some other information, sure, that might be in the file too. And
okay, but the Liberal leader came out and said that personal lives are out of bounds. He came out and said that we crossed a barrier. When he apologized in the House of Commons after saying that he had just learned of this, he indicated that personal lives are out of bounds, but the Liberal Party has a copy of the Public Safety Minister's divorce record on file. If it's out of bounds, why do they have the file? Who manages these documents? Who's responsible for gathering these documents? Who in the Liberal Party office is responsible for them? I assume that you must have went and got them from somebody. Who manages them? Who's responsible for gathering them? Whose position is this? If it's not yours as Caucus Resources Manager, whose is it?
Well, the documents and the files are updated and added to by many people.
Who? Give me some names.
You can go on to our government directory and you'll see a whole list of individuals.
Mr. Carroll, who manages these documents? Who would you have to go to if you wanted this file? You would say, I'm going to go see fill in the blank to get a copy of this file. Who would the blank be?
Well, we don't have a librarian. The files are available in a fully accessible filing cabinet that everybody in our office is able to access.
Which office? Whose office?
The Liberal Research Bureau.
The Liberal Research Bureau. Who runs the Liberal Research Bureau?
The director of the Liberal Research Bureau.
And his name is? Their name?
Yeah, it's actually a female. Marcy Sirks is the manager of the LRB.
Marcy Sirks, thank you very much. So Marcy Sirks, I would assume, undertook to get a copy of the Public Safety Minister's divorce record, presumably based on the information we have from the NDP.
Well, I don't think that that's a fair statement at all. I think you're making a very gross generalization and an assumption that is completely baseless and without fact.
Do you agree with the Liberal interim leader that personal lives are outside of the bounds of play in politics?
Well, I'll tell you what I do agree with, and that's, and I'll quote, members need to accept your personal life is fair game. That's the world we live in. I'm not going to try in any way to suggest that somehow aspects of my life are off limits. Who said that? Minister Taves. He said that at Procedure and House Affairs Committee, March 27th, 2012.
So you don't agree with Bob Ray then? Okay, that's good. All right. I don't always agree with him either. It surprises me that you indicated that you thought it was really extraordinary that the Speaker would use the resources of the Speaker's office to actually investigate you. It sounded like you're playing the victim a little bit here. Like, I'm a little surprised by your tone. But I did just have one final question for you, because I assume I'm probably running out of time. You indicated when it was clear that, you know, everything was kind of coming down on you, that you sent a note out to say that it wasn't the NDP. But you were pretty deceptive in how you did that, because you said, I'm not in Ottawa, I'm not who you think I am. There's more than one person with access to this email account. There's more than one person posting these things. There's more than one person with this information. Were you just being dishonest then, or are you being fully open and honest today?
No, I didn't say what the specific things that you just said. I said, and I'll quote, "I am not in Ottawa. Many people have access to the email address. The Ottawa Citizen in particular is targeting the wrong person." At the time that I posted this, I was not in Ottawa.
But you said many people had access to the email address.
Well, in that respect, the password was pretty easy to guess, so I made an assumption that if anyone wanted to guess what that email password was, they could pretty well go on there and get access to it.
Mastro, your time is up, and I'll now give the floor to Mr. Andrews for 7 minutes.
Mr. Chair and Mr. Champ and Mr. Carroll, thank you for coming today. And before I get my questions to you, first I'd like to address a couple of the things, assumptions that the Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister sort of addressed in his comments. He's trying to make aspersions that political parties don't do research on their opposition opponents and wouldn't have that information lying around. I would suggest to the Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister he should show up for 15 minutes before question period and have a listen to some of his own members' statements in the House of Assembly, the House of Commons in the preceding question period. And it's quite evident that parties do research on other members and are not afraid to use that in the House of Commons. So let it not be some deep, dark secret that this doesn't go on in this place. Mr. Carroll, thank you for coming. As a former political staffer myself, and now fortunate enough to sit in the House of Commons, I can appreciate that sometimes you get wrapped up in the moment, and you get wrapped up in your job because you're trying to do the job the best of your ability. One of the things that you said is that you have respect for Parliament, and I'm just wondering if you would care to elaborate on your respect for Parliament, and do you consider the ongoing personal attack on that none of the information that tweeted was private information?
Thank you very much for your question. You asked two questions. One was to elaborate on my respect for Parliament, and the other was to discuss whether I felt that the information that I posted was private information. With regard to my respect for Parliament, all I can say is, as a kid who grew up in this town, there's nothing bigger than Parliament. Any time you're going out, any time you're having any getting out of the house, inevitably you'll pass by this place and it'll take your breath away every time. As a kid, that was the case, and still to this day. And it's not just that I'm a fan of architecture, it's that I understand what goes on in this place, and I have deep, deep respect for it. That is why, after graduating university and doing business as a self-employed businessman for a while, I had an opportunity to come and work on Parliament Hill, and I gave up everything to do it, and I never regretted that. And working on the Hill, to me, is truly an honor and is probably the best calling I could ever have asked for. With respect to the tweets being private, I would have to say no. I'm sorry. The particular information that was published, as I've repeated numerous times, is public information. And you know what? There's a particular policy, and I'll just quote this policy. Just if what you're talking about is specific to the affidavits, the Manitoba Courts policy on access to courts records states, quote, An open court that permits access to both court proceedings and court records is of fundamental importance to a free and democratic society. This ensures that justice is not only done, but seen to be done. Now, as a trained lawyer, Mr. Taves would have known that every document that was submitted in his court case would be available to the public. There was no publication ban. There was no extraneous circumstances that would have those documents be not available to the public. And in that case, they are as public as anything else that you could access at your fingertips. The very fact that you need to go and pick up a copy does not in any way suggest that those documents are not any more public than accessing an encyclopedia at the library.
And I would agree that Mr. Taves is a very easy target for criticism, because he does say some pretty stupid things. And just recently, he made an announcement of shutting down prisons and claimed that there was no need for shutting the prisons because they just enacted legislation less than 2 months ago that had cut down on the crime rate. So Mr. Taves is a very easy target for criticism. And today we also see the hypocrisy of the Conservatives where calling a staff member before committee. In previous parliaments, when their staff members were called before committee, they wouldn't have anything to do with it, but now they like to rake other staff members before committee on a seamless witch hunt. You're just human, Mr. Carroll, and we work in a very intense environment here on Parliament Hill, and you stated that it was very difficult times for you personally. And what toll has this taken on you personally?
Thank you very much for your question. I'm not one to want to get too much into detail about myself and my life, but in generalities, because I did mention in my opening statement that it has been a difficult period of time. There were some circumstances that coincided with the events of this WikiLeaks situation that on my family made a period of time very, very difficult. The greatest medicine in the world, I believe, is time, and time heals. So I appreciate that, but
Votre temps est écoulé, malheureusement.
Fortunately, your time is up now, but you will have an opportunity to continue when there's another question. 7 minutes now to Ms. Davidson.
Congratulations on your move as chair of our committee. I look forward to working with you. So, Mr. Carroll, thank you very much for appearing before us this morning. Certainly, I know that everyone has a lot of questions. We've heard your testimony thus far, and I just want to be very clear that I understood what you have told us. I think the one thing that you told us was that the IP address that was tracked was a House of Commons desktop. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. You said that most of the documents that you referenced were available online, but affidavits were available in your office. You didn't know how they got there, but they were available in the office. Is that correct?
Yes.
You also said that that the information in the office was updated and added to by many people, and that the manager in that office was Marcy Sirks. Is that correct?
There are several managers in that office. I wouldn't specifically say that she was responsible for those documents. Those are your words.
Okay. Could you please then give me the names of those that would be responsible for them, if it's not Ms. Sirks?
I think what you're trying to do here is
Objection, Mr.
Point
Chair.
out, Mr. Angus.
Of order, Mr. Angus.
our committee in order to gather intelligence on the Liberal Party. That is none of our business of this committee, and I think that you should refrain from that kind of attempt of turning our committee into a mockery. Stick to the facts, and I don't believe he has to answer any questions about what happens within the Liberal Party office in terms of their staffing. It has nothing to do with this.
Même point d'ordre, Monsieur Delmastro.
On another point of order, on the same point of order.
Not a point of order. I'll allow you to rule on that, but I just ask that that not be taken from the member's time. Thank you.
Je pense que je peux laisser continuer.
I'll allow Mr. Carroll to continue, and
Faut rester.
at the same time, I would ask Ms. Davidson to remain on topic. I think it's perhaps important to, yes, speak to the information, but please remain on topic.
Go back and look at Mr. Delmastro's motion for Mr. Carroll to appear before here today. It explicitly asks in his motion for his use of House of Commons resources to undertake this attack. It had nothing to do with other members in the office. He's already stated that. So I think these questions are actually out of the line of the purview of the motion that's before committee.
Je pense que c'est important de
Thank you for that. I think it's just important to remain on topic on the information that was available on the web, but not all information that is collected by the Liberal Party. So you can continue, and I did stop the clock at the time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And actually, that's what my questions were related to, was the information that you, Mr. Carroll, were accessing. I'm not concerned about what all kind of information the Liberal Party has. I'm quite imagine that they have tremendous amount of information that they've collected on people. What I'm interested in is how you got the information that you accessed. And you have told us that it was available through affidavits that were in the office. So I'm just trying to determine who was responsible for that information, how it got there, and who may have allowed you to access that information, if that was part of your job to access that information. I'd also like to know who else saw this information. Was this all public information? Did everybody in the Liberal Leader's office see it, or the Research Bureau, or the Liberal Caucus?
Point of order.
Of House of Commons resources, not to talk about the Liberal filing cabinet and who ran the Liberal filing cabinet. You were on a political intelligence fishing expedition. That's not why we asked Mr. Carroll. It's about his use of House of Commons resources, which would seem to me to be his BlackBerry and his computer. How those documents came is none of your business.
Mr. Delmastro.
Mr. Delmastro.
Ms. Davidson, but he never saw fit to bully me during my question. Mr. Chairman, I'd ask that you bring him in the line. Thank you.
Je vous remercie pour vos commentaires.
Thank you for the comments.
I felt I was being really mean to Mr. Delmastro over the last few months when he ran some kangaroo court, so I gave him a bit of time and a little bit of slack.
C'est pas en lien avec le sujet d'aujourd'hui.
Mr. Angus, that doesn't have anything to do with the topic at hand today, and I'll give the floor back to Ms. Davidson, and we'll understand that we have to remain on topic, and I hope that we'll continue to remain on the topic and on the affidavits that Mr. Carroll had access to, and nothing more.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I go back and refer to the comments that were made by Mr. Carroll in his opening remarks. I think he stated that everything that he posted came from publicly available sources, or something very close to those words. I believe that was the intent, and I may not have the exact 3 words, but they were there. He's told us that those documents were available, many of them online. He's told us that affidavits were in the office, and my question just is, who all then would be able to access these records? If you could name those people for me, please, or give me an indication.
The purpose of this meeting is to supposedly examine my use of House of Commons resources. About a year ago, Madame Davidson, you were acting chair of this committee when a very similar motion came to the floor that Linda Duncan and that Sean Murphy appear to be examined on their use of House of Commons resources. And you ruled that that motion was completely out of order. And not only did you rule that that motion was out of order based on the advice that you got from the clerk, you specifically said that you agreed.
Chair, I would ask that the witness please answer the chair that's before him, or the question that's before him. We've got specific questions that I have asked, and I have not received any answers to this point.
You've had.
Are you telling me that you can't tell me who has seen the copy of these records or who may have viewed them?
Mr. Chair, I pride myself on being a pretty knowledgeable person, but I don't see how I can be expected to answer a question about who has seen a piece of paper in our office over the period of time that the piece of paper would have been in our office.
So, Mr. Carroll, who would have access to it then, whether they had...
Mr. Angus.
Order, Mr. Angus.
It has been turned repeatedly into a circus by the Conservatives. They cannot use this as an attempt to squeeze out information about what is done in the Liberal office. My job is not to defend the Liberal Party in any manner, but to establish the basic rules for this Parliament, which is that we brought him to talk about his use of resources. He cannot be compelled to answer or implicate anybody else for any of their work in their office. So I'd ask Ms. Davidson to stop using our committee as a political fishing expedition for Mr. Harper's war room.
Merci, Monsieur Angus. Alors, c'est le même point d'ordre que tantôt.
So, Mr. Angus, this is the same point of order. I would just remind the committee to remain on topic and not to start expanding on how the Liberal Party might be collecting information or using information. Mr. Carroll can answer in a way that he sees fit.
Chairman, that's actually absolutely false. The witness has no... The witness must answer the questions. We have gone through this before, and the only person making a circus of this committee is Mr. Angus. So I would encourage you, this is within the scope of this study. Ms. Angus has put a question forward that is entirely valid. The witness Ms. Davidson, sorry, has put forward a question that is entirely valid, and the witness must answer that question.
Mr. Chair, point of order. You cannot compel testimony, especially when this testimony is off topic. I know Mr. Del Mastro wants to squeeze the life out of this poor guy, but you know what? That's not why he brought him here. He brought him here on his use of resources. So if Ms. Davidson wants to use her time to ask questions, she must ask about the fundamental question, which the Conservative Party cannot compel him to give testimony that has nothing to do.
Mr. Angus, I'd just like to remind the committee what I read at the beginning, which is on pages 1067 and 1068 of Brian Bosk. I did state that witnesses giving testimony may be assisted by counsel, but they must first seek the committee's permission. Counsel, when permitted, is restricted to an advisory role and may neither ask questions nor reply on the witness's behalf. So the counsel may not ask questions nor reply on the witness's behalf. Counsel is also not noted in the minutes of proceedings as a witness, but rather as a participant or a person attending as an individual. There are no specific rules governing the nature of questions which may be put to witnesses appearing before committees beyond the general requirement of relevance to the issue before the committee. Witnesses must answer all questions which the committee puts to them. A witness may object to a question asked by an individual committee member. However, if the committee agrees that the question be put to the witness, he or she is obliged to reply. On the other hand, members have been urged to display the appropriate courtesy and fairness when questioning witnesses. The actions of a witness who refuses to answer questions may be reported to the House. And then I'd just like to come back to what was pointed out in the beginning. I'm not challenging Ms. Davidson's question. However, I believe it is important that Mr. Carroll be able to respond to the question, and so therefore I will allow Ms. Davidson to continue. We haven't allowed Mr. Carroll an opportunity to finish his response. So if we could please continue while remaining on topic, as I stated before, and the same to the witness, being able to answer to the best of his abilities to the question with the knowledge he has.
Ask the question one more time, and if you are not able to answer it, then I think you need to clearly tell us that. All I'm asking is, who else in the Liberal leader's office, the Research Bureau, the caucus, or any Liberal MP's office would you think has seen a copy of these documents?
Mr. Chair, anybody who's ever set foot in our office has the potential of looking at these documents. I find the question pretty absurd, and I thank you for bringing up procedure and practice. There's another section that you didn't mention, Mr. Chair, but I'll just take the opportunity that, and I've highlighted this part, that with regard to the relevance of questions, there is a general requirement of relevance to the issue before the committee.
Okay, I think that thank you, Mr. Carroll, but I think that the chair has read the regulations. I do have another question for you. It's been several weeks since you resigned from the Liberal Research Bureau. During that time, have you been questioned about your role in these tweeting extracts by anyone employed by the Liberal Research Bureau or the Liberal Leader's Office?
Thank you for the question, and the answer is no.
Okay, so no one at all has questioned you regarding the situation that you found yourself to be in?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Have you you've been identified as the individual responsible for the WikiLeaks Twitter account, and you've told us a little bit about the password, saying that you thought that others could have guessed what that password was.
Yes.
So do you know whether or not anyone besides yourself knew that password or have login access to the account?
No, I do know that nobody was able to guess it because there's access logs. I mean, it was, to me, a pretty easy one: strong, stable, national majority conservative government. But no one seemed to guess it.
It's a very good choice.
Désolé de vous interrompre, votre train est écoulé.
Sorry, I'll have to interrupt you. Your time is up. So we'll finish the first round of 7 minutes. Mr. Carroll pointed out he would like to be able to take breaks. Perhaps I'll ask him now if he would still like to be able to take a break. Would you like to do that? Yes, I would. Thank you. In that case, we'll take a 10-minute break as requested, and we'll allow everyone time to reflect before they come back to the next 5-minute round of questions. So 10-minute suspension.
Alors, j'inviterai tout le monde.
I would ask everyone to come back to their seats, please. Please, everyone, come back to your seats. Now that the 10-minute break is up, we'll give the floor to Ms. Borg for a 5-minute question and answer period. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to begin by saying that, as my colleague pointed out, I am against the fact that we are using this committee to consider this issue. This committee is supposed to be considering issues that are productive for Canadian society rather than partisan issues. And this is yet another example of the unfortunate tactics that the Conservatives have been using. And I would also like to correct the parliamentary secretary who suggested that perhaps the NDP had had a role to play because we might have sent someone to Winnipeg. We have not been involved in this affair. We've been blamed, and yet we had nothing to do with it. And when I personally put a question to the Minister of Public Safety on C30, it was because I wanted information for Canadians. And I was accused by the Minister of Foreign Affairs for having had some sort of role to play in this affair. So, Mr. Carroll, this is my question to you. Did the NDP have a role in this or not? Yes or no? Thank you for the question. And the answer is simply no. Thank you. I hope that clarifies then this issue for everyone. Now I'd like to continue by saying that the mere fact that we have to put this question is an example of the kinds of political childish games that are being played in this Parliament rather than considering real issues, raising real questions and using the time in this question to put parliamentary questions. It's just the time is being used to play childish games, and I think it's time the government realized this. Now, I also have another question for Mr. Carroll. I was personally very disappointed by the words of the Minister of Public Safety with respect to C30, because I think that this also raises serious problems, and it also raises serious problems about privacy. So my question to Mr. Carroll is this: does he feel that with WikiLeaks, in fact, we ended up getting distracted from the real issue about C30 rather than WikiLeaks? Thank you once again for the question. I'll continue my response in English.
WikiLeaks potentially distract attention away from the real issues and real dangers of Bill C-30. I would say no. And the reason why I would say no is because I did an analysis of media mentions over the past 2 years between using keywords like lawful access, a number of the bills that had been previously introduced along these lines, to get a full picture of how much was being driven in the media about this exact issue. And when we came to the point with WikiLeaks, I'm not making a total suggestion that it had as bigger of an impact than it might have, but it helped, I believe, draw attention to the bill and some of the more superficial aspects of the bill, such as privacy and having the government be able to access, not superficial in the sense that it's that we need to that they're not important, but there's of course a lot more substance to the bill, but just to get people an idea of what the bill was about. And I think that through that it drove people to investigate a little bit further, and by the end of that week a lot of people were talking about the bill.
Une minute. Okay, merci.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer. I'd just like to underscore the fact that rather than speaking today about the implications with respect to privacy because of Bill C-30 and the right to privacy, here we are discussing WikiLeaks. I have another question for Mr. Carroll. You disclosed a week later that it was you who was responsible for WikiLeaks. Rather, you closed the account, and then a week later, we learned, or you disclosed, that you were the one who was responsible for WikiLeaks. So what happened during that week? So a very brief answer, please. Thank you.
Investigation, and I've made comments on how I feel about that speaker's investigation and the basis of which it was conducted. The speaker's investigation took place, and my computer was the one that they discovered.
Merci. Alors, votre temps est écoulé. Je laisse la...
Thank you. Your time is up. I'll now give the floor to Mr. Calkins for 5 minutes.
Today, I've heard a few contradictions in your testimony, and I just wanted to clarify a few things. You were the caucus resource manager. Do I have that right? That was your title that you gave to us?
I think it was the specific title was Advisor, Caucus Relations, or Caucus Services.
Who did you report to? Who was your? I mean, you weren't the big fish in the pond there, right?
No,
so
I'm a really small fish.
You reported to somebody. Who was it? Was it Marcy Sirks? Was that?
Yes.
Was it? But because you said you were a manager, that means that you probably had people reporting to you as well. Am I correct with that? Did you have people that you were directing with activities in the office?
Well, I was not a manager. I misspoke earlier. I inadvertently gave myself a promotion for a job I don't have anymore. No, I managed the files, but I was an advisor, Caucus Services.
And this is the only time you've misspoken today? Is that just so we're clear? This is the only thing that you told us you were a manager. I remember you saying the word. Is there anything else that I should be aware of that you haven't told the truth on, Carol?
No,
okay.
Mr. Chair.
That would be, that's great. So I can just imagine, okay, you're sitting at the office. You must have been quite giddy with what you were about to do. I mean, you spoke quite passionately about what motivated you. You had an email account that you started a Twitter account with. They would have sent a confirmation back to you. You said that somebody should have the ability to guess what the password is. You shared that with us. It was humorous. Thank you very much for doing that. But you told nobody about this. Is that right?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
You told nobody about what you were about to do. Nobody else in the office knew. You weren't sitting around your computer discussing this with your colleagues, discussing with any of the people that you worked with. Nobody knew what you were about to do. You acted alone in this. That means you weren't directed by it, but you didn't share any of what you were about to do with anyone in the office. Is that right?
You're confirming what I've said already.
Okay, if that's the case, then how is it with 2 followers on your account in a very short time span, Justin Trudeau retweeted your tweet? How did that happen?
Listen, I've never met Justin Trudeau. Okay, before this, he probably couldn't have picked me out of a lineup. I've never had any conversations with him. So if you're trying to make a suggestion that Justin and I are buds and we concocted this whole thing, it's absurd.
Let's face it, Mr. Carroll. I mean, we can go on and we can see how many followers everybody who's on Twitter has. We know that Mr. Trudeau's got a lot of followers. It would only make sense from a planning and strategic perspective, from somebody in your position, to get this information out in front of as many people as possible. It would seem like the logical thing to do. You say that you've acted alone on this, yet you have no knowledge of Mr. Trudeau, so please fill in the blanks for me, Mr. Carroll. How can I connect the 2 dots?
D'adresser vos paroles par la présidence.
You please adjust your remarks to the chair. Thank you.
To connect 2 dots that don't exist. So I'm sorry, I can't.
Well, I mean, the dots do exist. I mean, you said that you put the tweet out there. It was retweeted by Mr. Trudeau, yet you have no idea how that possibly happened. You had, I think, a grand total of 2 followers on your WikiLeaks 30 account, and yet it just managed to somehow appear in the most popular Liberal member of Parliament's radar screen to be retweeted. I think leaves some questions to be asked. I understand that you've played the victim card here today, and I get that. I mean, I understand what it's like, but I mean, when you push the button send out into the multiverse or the Twitterverse or whatever it happens to be, you kind of take those masks off. Well, at least that's your contention, that nobody should have to. We should have free reign to do whatever we want in complete anonymity on the internet, I think is where you're coming at with Bill C-30, but I digress. I would agree with you, Mr. Carroll. You are a victim. You were thrown completely under the bus by your party, by your leader, who said that this information absolutely crosses a line. And I just want to know, has anybody communicated with you before that affidavits on people's personal lives should be in a unlocked filing cabinet in an office where staffers, I would assume, come and go rather quickly? I mean, you were only there from August until February. My guess is that you're not you're the first one to come through that office or the last one to go, have access to this information. I don't know who would have a catalog of all of this information, or how you would come to magically know that those affidavits are there. But it bothers me to know that it's just sitting, any information about any particular individual member of Parliament is being researched to this level of detail. You've somehow tried to minimize it by stating that quotes that we take off the public media that we rebroadcast during a member's statements is somehow the equivalent of making a trip to a courthouse in Manitoba to get an affidavit for somebody's court proceedings. A little bit different, Mr. Carroll. So am I out of time, Mr.
Your time is up. I'm afraid you no longer have any time for more questions. The next question goes to Mr. Cullen for 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations and welcome to this committee.
Debating a potential breach of privilege in the House of Commons earlier today with respect to the F-35s and whether the Minister of Defence in this case was telling Canadians the truth or not, and that debate is now before the Speaker of the House. This conversation was initially brought up as whether a breach of privilege of Mr. Taves' rights as a parliamentarian were invoked. The Speaker did not rule that way. But the question comes before us, and I'm curious, Mr. Carroll, if you've got any advice for staff. You've been through something that was of your making. You chose to create this, what became a very powerful tool that went far and wide. Do you offer any advice to other staff that are in the business of research in Parliament?
Thank you very much for your question, and since we're congratulating people, I also offer my congratulations to you, to Mr. Cullen. I have some advice for staffers that I suppose when engaging in personal activity, that they would refrain from using their computer at work. Clearly, they're able to track everything, and even if you're not doing anything wrong, they'll be able to point a finger at you.
Mr. Carroll, I haven't followed your case closely. Have you been accused of breaking the law at any point?
Thank you for your question. Absolutely not.
Okay. Let me ask you this, if you're comfortable answering it. Do you regret what you did?
I think regret is a very subjective and personal emotion, and you'll have to indulge me when I say that I have no regrets about anything in my life.
Okay. I suppose as parliamentarians, there seems to be a learning gap between the traditions of this place and how things were communicated and the new tools that are available to anybody with an email account. One of the tools you used, it was characterized that it was and forgive me, I don't impugn, but was characterized as a form of character assassination, that a minister of the Crown's personal life was put into a very public space, at which point it cannot be very well controlled. These tools are incredibly powerful. What connection do you make back to the legislation that was being discussed in the context of this controversy? Specifically, I believe it was Bill C-30.
Well, I agree that that there is information that is more on a personal life than a public life. Mr. Taves himself has said that personal life, private life, it's all fair game. He said that afterwards, but with respect to why I used this publicly available and accessible material in this way, it was because the government was proposing a bill that would have them access our private, personal information.
Do you think it is fair game? Do you think, I mean, you worked in a parliamentary context, you worked for members of parliament to engage in public life. Do you think the exposure of someone's divorce documents is, in this case, do you think that's fair?
I think that any information that is available to the public should be public. That's my personal opinion. I'm a great believer in access to full information, and people can make their judgments themselves.
It's interesting. If I have, Mr. Chair, just
Vous avez
You have time for short comment.
obviously that you've learned, but I suggest that there might be lessons for all of us in this, and just where that line is as parties frequently and with increasing frequency, Chair, engage more in the personal attacks than the substantive on legislation or a party's position, and that character assassinations by certain parties in particular have become the norm rather than the exception. Thank you for the time.
Merci, Monsieur Cullen. Alors, je cède donc.
Thank you, Mr. Cullen. I'll now give the floor to Mr. Dushin for 5 minutes.
To congratulate you on your new position that you have. And I guess, Mr. Carroll, a couple of the questions that I have, and I want to go back to part of what was taking place with the NDP and the situation that occurred there, and I'm sure that you appreciate the support that you are getting today. However, I'm just curious how closely aligned or what you know about the Liberal blogger that thought having the NDP take the heat for this was in your party's best interest, and you know, that is what had taken place, and maybe we want to take a different look at it right now. But do you have any association with that person, with the blogger?
I'm sorry, you haven't mentioned anybody's name.
Neither had you. You said that there was a Liberal blogger that had taken the NDP to task. So that's what I'm asking. If the person that you mentioned as this Liberal blogger was someone that you knew, if you do or you don't, I just want the answer.
There were a number of people who posted their own theories. Okay. You're asking me if I know that individual. I don't know what individual you're talking about.
Okay, fair enough. You hadn't mentioned it as well, but you had brought that up. I assumed that you might have some idea what you were talking about earlier in that regard. I guess there's a couple of other questions that I have. You were let go by the Liberal Party. The Liberal leader told the House of Commons that you offered your resignation, that he accepted it. My question is, was your resignation voluntary?
No.
So your
That's an honest answer.
Okay, thank you for the honest answer. I think I have some questions. Are you getting any severance pay or separation pay?
I'd object to that, Mr. Chair. I'd ask permission to address that objection.
Monsieur Champ, vous pouvez pas répondre.
Mr. Champ, you cannot respond unless you're given unanimous consent on the behalf of the committee. So I'll allow Mr. Carroll to respond, but you can consult if you have the permission of the committee. Point of order.
Out of line. It has nothing to do with what we're discussing here today. I would suggest, Mr. Dreesen, that you go read the Procedures and House Affairs manuals of your own staff, and that would explain how separation pay is awarded. You know the answer to that question. You don't need him to answer that question. So I would suggest you go read your own staff manual, and it would be the similar.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to continue. Actually, just bringing back earlier on, Mr. Cullen had talked about advice for staffers and what you could advise to staff. So I suppose it has something to do with the treatment that you would possibly get. And so I guess my question is, who asked you to resign if it was not voluntary?
Bob Ray.
Okay, thank you. I'll give the rest of my time to Mr. Del Mastro.
2 minutes 30.
Thank you.
2.5 minutes.
Were any of Jordan Owens, Jeff Hall, or Adam Goldenberg aware that you were involved in the release of the minister's divorce files?
I met Adam Goldenberg when I was living in Vancouver, and that was the extent of our connection. I don't know the other two people that you talked about.
Okay. It strikes me that you seem to be you indicated that you were kind of a small fish, but I mean the Liberal Party gets knocked all the way down to 30 seats. Presumably a lot of Liberal staffers lost their jobs, but you maintained your position. You couldn't have been that small a fish. The fact that you don't seem to know very many people or know who could have been in charge of an office or who might be in charge of a file or how a file got there, it really strikes me. How do you square the circle? How did you maintain your position with the Liberal Party when a lot of people lost their jobs if you're so insignificant in the office, insignificant to the point that you don't really know any MPs, you don't really know who Liberal staffers are, and you don't really know who runs the office? How did you maintain your position?
Well, I thank you for that pep talk. The truth is, I did lose my job. Brad Butt saw to that, and I was unemployed for a number of months. And I was fortunate enough to get a new job with the Leader's Office.
So you were fortunate enough to get a new job, I'm sure, based on work that you had done in the past and what people understood that you were capable of doing. I assume that you worked with people. You worked as a resources individual, providing resources to caucus.
Point d'ordre, Mr. Andrews.
Point of order, Mr. Andrews.
For the Liberal Party, I'm sure I could ask if they would like his advice on how we hire people. I don't think there's any relevance at all in what Mr. Del Mastro was asking. So could you please keep this to relevance of why the individual is here today?
Merci du rappel. Évidemment, je continue.
Thank you, and obviously I will continue to recall to all members to remain on topic. I have allowed for some flexibility, though, for Mr. Andrews as well, when you were asking personal questions, but I would just remind everyone to try to remain on topic, please, and that is to do with WikiLeaks and not the more general issue of hiring within the Liberal Party.
With due respect to Mr. Andrews, I think the Liberal Party could use some advice on some of its more recent hires, its selection of its past leader that has made some rather ridiculous comments this week. I think you could use some advice. I'd be happy to advise you on that. But of course, the point is. Point of order. Point is.
Point d'ordre, Mr. Andrews.
I'd like to know.
Point of orders, Mr. Andrews.
His office.
Je pense que ça n'a pas en lien avec le sujet aujourd'hui. Alors, j'appellerai M. Andrews de rester sur le sujet.
I don't think that has anything to do with the topic at hand today, so I would ask that we remain on topic.
I wouldn't want a file on their former leader in my office. It might be contagious. But the point here, Mr. Carroll, is I think that you've been a good soldier. I think you've taken a bullet. I think you're prepared to accept all this. I don't know what you may have been promised for accepting all this. You've been thrown under the bus, dragged through the mud. It's clear that someone in your position could not have undertaken all of these things on your own. You didn't have the files. You've indicated these weren't your files that you used. Somebody provided it to you. Mr. Calkins has correctly pointed out that this was retweeted by someone with significant followers on Twitter, someone that could push it out. That took some organization. And it's very clear that in your position, you were put into a position of trust, provided files with which you acted to push out information on the Minister of Public Safety, who, quite frankly, I think you would have to acknowledge, was bringing forward a bill that was in the public interest, a bill that the Liberal Party sought to bring, and a bill that was twice sought to bring by Marlene Jennings. So this was nothing but a partisan activity with coordination from the Liberal leader's office, and I believe you've taken a bullet for the team.
Order, Mr. Del Mastro. Your time was up 30 seconds ago. I'll provide Mr. Carroll with a few seconds to respond.
I disagree with everything that Mr. Del Mastro said. To use his words, baseless smears, or in the acronym BS.
Merci. Alors, le prochain sur la liste, c'est M. Angus pour 5 minutes.
The next speaker we have on the list is Mr. Angus. You have 5 minutes.
Deteriorated. My poor friend Mr. Del Mastro's penchant for conspiracy theories is turned this committee to ridicule time and time again. But I understand it, because here's a man who on the daily news has to defend widespread voter fraud as being something that was, hey, it never happened on our watch. I'm sure it's difficult for him to go home and explain to people why the Conservative Party is being investigated for widespread voter fraud. We have Christian Parody, not once, not twice, but now 3 times being investigated for ethical violations. We have Bev Oda and her $1,000 limo ride.
Just remind you to remain on topic, to be fair to everyone, please. We're on WikiLeaks. Yes, quite precisely, Mr. Chairman.
That throughout their deteriorating set of questions is attempting to throw as much muck as possible to divert attention from the widespread corruption that's happening in the ranks and the misbehavior of their ministers. So I would just like to reiterate for the record, we asked you, did you receive support? You said no. Did you work alone? You said yes. Did you break any laws? No. Did you attempt to implicate the NDP? You said no. We don't tend to believe you. We believe that we were dragged into this, but hey, that's for the record. Mr. Dreschen says that you're getting support from us today. I would just ask you, Mr. Carroll, we told you we didn't think you deserved to be here. It wasn't an issue for our committee. We've asked you the questions. Do you believe that we're here to support you in any way, or are we here to just ask the questions? What is your opinion of our line of questioning?
I think your line of questions have been fair and to the point, and I don't see any suggestion of what Mr. Dreschen indicated.
Okay, so I want to go back to the question that it seems that the Conservatives believe that there's something, I find it unsavory, people's personal lives being dragged into politics. I personally disagree with you, Mr. Carroll. I think people's personal lives need to be somewhat set aside, unless there's something extremely egregious. However, you had access to these documents. You released these documents. These documents are accurate. Correct?
Correct.
So why in God's name is our committee investigating Minister Tave's unsavory divorce? Does it have anything to do with the work of this committee? Do you believe you've been on the Hill? That we need to know any more about Mr. Taves and who he was sleeping with? Does that have anything to do with the work of this committee, or do you believe that this is just a sideshow?
Thank you very much for your question. I've also been wondering that same question for myself. Why are we here? What are we doing here? We're not even in the right place. We're not even talking about something that is with respect to any laws or legislation. No, I agree with what you said earlier. I think this is a sideshow. This is a distraction. The circumstances and events came out right when their robocall scandal was just beginning to break, and this seemed like a very convenient way to turn the channel, as it's called.
I just want to finish off because I think we should be close to putting an end to this affair. Mr. Del Mastro believes that Bill C-30 is in the public interest, a bill that would allow the minister widespread discretion to spy on the activities of ordinary citizens without any real clear indication that this is justifiable. It has widespread opposition across Canada, particularly in Western Canada. Given this minister's disregard and attacks on average Canadians and calling them child pornographers if they speak up for the issue of privacy rights, do you believe that we do need, as Canadians, to stand up to this government on Bill C-30?
I wouldn't have done what I did if I didn't fully agree and support that position. Bill C-30 will eliminate the need for judicial oversight on searches and fishing expeditions, as they're called. I don't believe that that's right, and I believe that we have to protect our privacy, and that was what I was trying to do.
Thank you very much.
Alors, votre temps est écoulé, Monsieur Angus. Donc, il reste...
Your time is up, Mr. Angus. We have 10 minutes left with 5-minute turns. And I'll give the floor to Mr. Mays. 5 minutes.
Mr. Carroll, I appreciate you being here today. And, you know, you stated earlier that you hadn't committed anything illegal. And, you know, we are a committee here, and the chair is not a judge and we're not a jury, but we're an ethics committee. And the question really is are your actions ethical? And is it ethical to use an office that's funded by taxpayers, a computer that's funded by taxpayers, and your salary is funded by taxpayers to do what you did? And I think that's a serious question. And that's what the question that needs to be answered here, if you feel it's ethical what you did. That's my first question. The second question is, Mr. Anders correctly pointed out that there are funds given to interns for severance, but also the question of separation. Are you receiving, or did you receive, discretionary funds from the Liberal Leader's office? First question is, do you feel what you
Thank you for your question. Yes, I'll answer them in order. I think that this actually gets to the bottom of my question earlier, why are we here? I think there are some people who think that because this is called the Ethics Committee, we're here to judge ethics. This is there's no forum to discuss what is ethical or what is not ethical. I have no answer to your question, because I think that is for every individual to answer for themselves.
Second question.
The second question you're asking about my severance, I'm not sure why or where you're trying to go with that. I assume it's because you're trying to build up a storyline that doesn't exist. But I assure that, you know what, I'm just going to simply say that I will not answer that question because it's completely inappropriate.
Okay. I don't have any more questions.
Le temps qui reste, il reste en 2 minutes.
We have 2.5 minutes left. Mr. Del Mastro has the floor.
Well, as you'll know from your decades of political experience, I believe you've worked for a number of MPs. Bonnie Crombie, you mentioned. Joe Volpe, you worked on his leadership campaign. They raised people from the dead. Many Canadians in public life have gone through family breakdowns. You know, I'm proud that my party, the Conservative Party, has maintained a high ethical standard. We've never engaged in circulating divorce records of our political opponents. Never. But there's been many. If your smear campaign has served any purpose, I hope it'll be to shame the Liberal Party into demanding better from its staff. And more importantly, reflecting on its own internal culture of rot, which produces activists that undertake things like you did. I want to thank you for your appearance today. I think that we've gained a number of answers today, but I'm left with an awful lot of questions as well, because it's very clear to me that you've indicated that things such as everyone in the Liberal office, you said everyone had access to these files. I can't see what purpose a file like this would serve in the Liberal Research Bureau other than to be used for the exact purpose that you used it in. And I would think that it was done with the full knowledge of the leadership of the Liberal Party, that files like this were being compiled, that with the intention of at some point turning someone like yourself loose with it, to use it in the fashion that you did. And I'd also suggest that if the Liberal Party truly wants to demonstrate, and I read a file from 2002, a newspaper story from when Kevin Bosch first arose on the Hill, and it talked about how Mr. Bosch came with files full of personal information, attack information on opposition MPs. I believe this has been a culture within the Liberal Party for some time. I think that you were picking up on that culture. I think you were using resource materials that you've indicated you don't even know where they came from, but they were readily available to every staff member in the Liberal office. I can't help but believe, and I don't think anyone that's impartial in this room can help but believe, that those files have been compiled for any reason in the Liberal Research Bureau other than to do exactly what you did with them. As I pointed out, the Liberal Party itself in 2005 brought a bill similar to Bill C-30 to assist police in tracking this kind of crime that we see in our streets. Marlene Jennings twice championed it as a private member's bill, and I believe Francis Scarpalegia demanded that the government support that bill and bring it forward at the time. I don't remember you using this information or using this kind of information or attack. This is the exact kind of faceless, bullying, smear campaign that we see other governments in other parts of the province trying to put an end to and a stop to. And frankly, I would expect better from the Liberal Party, and I think Mr. Ray needs to come clean on this.
Merci. Thank you. Your time is up. Do you have a brief response that you would like to give?
But I do want to point out that I think you used the word hypocrisy in there at least once. Are you suggesting that the Conservative Party of Canada's opposition research files are just perfectly clean with encyclopedia-level information about every member of Parliament in opposition? Is this what you're suggesting?
Merci, Monsieur Carroll.
Will you be willing to invite the media over to take a quick look?
Merci, Monsieur Carroll. Votre temps est écoulé. Je vais vous laisser si vous voulez continuer.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Your time is up. If you want to continue your response, you can do that at the next question. Mr. Andrews, you have 5 minutes.
Files that parties have, and where does this information come from? I would suggest to the Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister that after being in power for over 6 years, we often get delivered to our offices a lot of brown envelopes with a lot of information from government departments and from people that have information. So this information does appear in our offices, and it's nothing new. It's nothing that didn't happen before. It's nothing that won't happen again. Interesting to talk about the ethical part of this particular discussion, and my final question to you, Mr. Carroll, is and about ethical funds by taxpayers. In the particular affidavits with Mr. Tave, were there any allegations that he used House of Commons resources in those affidavits?
Thank you for your question. Well, yes. I mean, the parliamentary secretary asked an open-ended question: why would you have these files? Well, there is information in those affidavits that are very relevant to the work of the House of Commons and to members of Parliament, in particular with respect to the discussion of meal expenses. And if I recall, it's been a little while since I've had the opportunity to go through each and every one of the postings, but there seems to be, I recall a couple of postings, one in particular that says, quote, Vic claims the maximum allowable in per diems for food, $83.30 per day, because no receipts are required. This is what amounts to a tax-free allowance for Vic in the past while we were living together of approximately $10,000 per year. There is another point in here that says Vic receives approximately $25,500 tax-free annually from the government in order to pay for his accommodation and meals while in Ottawa. And then we get into the next section, which I termed Vicky Eats, where we talk about how that money was spent or whether or not these per diems were claimed while also out spending over $500 on pancakes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Any time left, or are we done?
Oui, ben, il est 12h45 et donc...
It's 12:45, so we're going to have to wrap up. We'll have to suspend for a few minutes, and then we'll move on with the committee business. So thank you for coming today.
Pas là, Madame Freeman va devoir.
Je dois-tu donner un coup de main? Je peux juste donner un coup de main pour commencer? Oui, ok, je fais ça,
Mais
Let's get back to business. We'll get back to our meeting, please. Order. As you know, we've already spoken about future business, but unfortunately we didn't really decide on our long-term business. What I have before me is this. Obviously today there was the appearance of Adam Carroll. On Thursday this week,
A meeting with Jennifer Stoddard about main estimates and the PIPEDA law, the LPRPDE en français.
by PETA. This will be a report on privacy legislation and then the main estimates. And then we also have a plan for next week. Karen Shepard, who will come and speak to the main estimates next Tuesday on the 1st of May. After that, we hadn't planned anything. What had been suggested was the continuation of the lobbying report. That was already ongoing, and there had been a 2-week extension granted for the purposes of analyzing it and coming back to it. So this is what I have in the way of suggestions after the main estimates with Karen Shepard. Is there agreement on this? So that would be the second half of the 1st of May, so next week. So is there consent on continuing the lobbying report? Mr. Del Mastro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in agreement with the schedule that you have before you. I just merely ask that when committee returns to considering the report on the Lobbying Act, that we stay on it until it's ready to be submitted to Parliament.
Okay. Donc c'était l'intention.
Yes, that was the intention. So we will continue that study and we'll take the time necessary. But then we really have an empty calendar. I had tabled a motion on the 2nd of April last on privacy protection laws and the Canada-U.S. Perimeter Security Action Plan. There seemed to be informal agreement to that, but unfortunately now I'm in the chair, so I can't table that motion again. I would need someone else to move this motion or table it with the agreement of the committee if there's unanimous consent, and if not, then we'll have to give a 2-day notice of motion. So is there consent? Ms. Borg is on the list. Yes, I would ask for unanimous consent to consider this motion, and congratulations, by the way, to the chair. So given the circumstances, given the fact that Mr. Dussault was elected chair, perhaps we could just ask for unanimous consent and grant it for this motion. So unanimous consent is being requested to change the name on the motion. It would be in the name of Ms. Borg. Is there unanimous consent to change that name on the motion? And so the motion is now standing in the name of Ms. Borg. So if she doesn't need to table it with 2 days' notice, we can debate it today. So you'll have to read it to begin with, and then we can debate this motion. Thank you. That the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics call the Privacy Commissioner of Canada, as well as the provincial and territorial privacy commissioners, to testify with regard to concerns expressed in a joint resolution published on the 2nd of April 2012 regarding the application of privacy protection laws to the Canada-U.S. Perimeter Security Action Plan, and that the committee report its findings back to the House. Thank you. I'll give the floor to Mr. Angus now.
I'm not sure if we, my only concern having read it is about wide open on bringing all the provincial privacy commissioners. I don't know if we necessarily need to do that at this point. I think what I'd like to do, and I'm offering this as an amendment because I think it's important that we hear from the commissioner, because this joint resolution, it's a good document. It's interesting in terms of there's a lot of issues that are being raised in terms of we're talking about increasing security, we're talking about increasing trade. How does privacy issues in terms of Canadian citizens' rights play into it? Because we have two very different regimes. This might, I think, open up further study down the road if we have questions out of it. But I think if we're going to do the work of this committee, we need to be apprised of these issues when they come forward. They've just released this document. It seems to me incumbent that we hear from them, or hear at least from the main privacy national commissioner. We could invite the others if they want to participate by a teleconference, but I would like to hear what they have to say, and then we can reflect as a committee if there's further follow-up that needs to be done.
Merci, Monsieur Angus. Alors,
Thank you, Mr. Angus. Would anyone else like the floor? Mr. Del Mastro.
We did want to have a conversation about this, which is why we wanted to bring it forward. It would seem to me, and one of the things is, as the Chairman will recall that I indicated, is I thought we needed to have a little more discussion as to where we wanted to see this go and what we wanted to see undertaken with it. My initial reaction or feeling is that this is probably more appropriate before Foreign Affairs, since that's where this is being considered at the present time, the specific agreement with the United States, or certainly where it should be considered. I'm just wondering if the NDP wouldn't be interested in having some, rather than calling a vote on this today, which we can force, if you wouldn't be interested in having some additional conversations about this, where we can determine exactly where we want to go on it, so that I can have a better understanding as to what Mr. Angus has proposed, an amendment. Perhaps we can just have some discussions between now and Thursday, or indeed next Tuesday. We've got a schedule here for a while, anyways. It's not urgent. As I said, my initial reaction on the motion, the way I read it, I would recommend it to Foreign Affairs, or perhaps Mr. Massey as the critic in your party for Borders. But perhaps what we can do in the interim is have a conversation about it. I just move that we set this aside for the time being to allow the parties to discuss it and determine whether this is the right forum or the wrong forum, and give me some, and the members on this side, some indication as to exactly where you see it going.
alors, je comprends
So then, from what I understand, we would take a little more time to reflect on this. And obviously, with respect to privacy commissioners, that's quite relevant to our committee's work. But if we're not quite ready to vote on this, because it's not quite ready as worded, or there hasn't been enough discussion amongst committee members, then we can see. But first, I'll give the floor to Mr. Angus.
In the mind of our chair when he originally came up with this, but I feel that this is the issue for our committee, because there's many issues at Foreign Affairs in terms of this. The perimeter security is a huge undertaking. What the privacy commissioners expressed is their concern that the issue of privacy was not going to be looked at, which is the purview of our committee. We had tried not to be too definitive in terms of the motion, so that we did not create a sense for our Conservative colleagues that we're coming in here with a fixed agenda. We've been meeting with a number of people who have various pieces of the puzzle, but we felt, well, perhaps the first thing is just to hear from the Commissioner. Then we can decide as a committee whether or not this requires further steps and further witnesses. That's why we did not throw in any other witness names. So if you want to hold this off till Thursday and we can talk, we're certainly fine by that. I think we do need to find areas within our committee that we can provide something that is positive to Parliament and to the public. Certainly the issue of privacy in these deals is something that I think we can work together on. So if we want to find time to talk, and then we can come back Thursday and we can discuss it more, if people think about it, I think my colleagues would support that.
je pense qu'on a un accord ici de...
All right, then I think there's agreement to provide both parties with a little more time, so that we can have a motion that is worded that we, in a way that we all agree on. Is there a date that we would like to continue this discussion on? perhaps it would be May 1st. We'd have a little more time then, perhaps after Ms. Shepard's appearance on the main estimates. So then we have until the 1st of May to agree on this motion. I don't see anything else on the agenda, and our time is up. So thank you for coming, and the meeting is over.